ERP software vendors are known for aggressive sales tactics. They misrepresent software functionality, they oversell the software, and they minimize the complexity of implementation projects. How do you mitigate the risks of dealing with these types of vendor misrepresentations? That's what I want to talk about today. My name is Marcus Harris. I'm a software and technology attorney. For the last 20 years, I've drafted and negotiated a variety of technology-related contracts and litigated failed technology disputes in courts across the country. What do vendor misrepresentations look like? And I think they take a variety of forms. And certainly in the cases that we litigate, we will see outright fraudulent inducements and negligent misrepresentations. And those are varieties of fraud. And we would make an allegation in those lawsuits that salesperson or that vendor or that consultant did that intentionally. They made intentional misrepresentations in order to get you to do something, sign the contract, sign the statement of work, move forward with the project, or they outright deceived you by misrepresenting the status of the project in project status reports, falsifying user acceptance testing. Those are unusual, and those are the things that end up in court. But what can you expect? What does it look like in the normal day-to-day? Well, I think the first thing you're going to run into is really bias, and that's how I would characterize it. You've got biased integrators, you've got biased consultants, you've got biased software providers, and you need to understand that there are entire product ecosystems designed around or revolving around each one of these major vendors: SAP, Oracle, Infor, Microsoft. And these people make their living by recommending and selling these products. So what happens is you think you're getting technology agnostic advice, objective advice. Someone comes in, they do a deep dive on your business process, on your current state, figure out what you can be doing better, try to tell you which one of these products is going to meet your needs the best. And you think you're getting an objective opinion, when in reality, they were already bought and sold before they even shook your hand. They come in there and they know that they're going to recommend SAP. They know they're going to recommend Oracle, and it doesn't matter what you tell them. And that really is problematic. And that, unfortunately, is all too common. I think what you want to do is try to get an independent consultant, an independent firm that's going to be able to tell you how it is. They're going to be objective. They're going to be technology agnostic. That really is where I think there's a lot of value add. It doesn't really do you a lot of good if you're utilizing a gold partner for Microsoft and you're trying to have them review and be objective about software demonstrations from 3 other software providers. They're going to go with Microsoft, and that is just the way it is. And I think if you can go into this with eyes wide open, know what you're getting into, know what the lay of the land looks like, you're going to be in a better position than you would be otherwise. And I think it also it's not just the technology consultants necessarily on the front end, but it's really throughout the duration of that project. I mean, you've got substantive integration partners that are allied with one of the software vendors. They are actually going to get a kickback, a commission, a payment, however you want to characterize it, for selling you more software, for selling you more services. They very well may be aligned in some way to provide additional services to you, whatever those services might be. But like I said, there are entire ecosystems built up around each one of these products. There are smaller companies that specialize in just promoting and selling and getting you to buy that particular vendor's software products. With respect to your integration partners, bias really takes the form of they are not in it for your best interest. They are biased towards their own best interest. They are not really looking out for you. They should be, but really their goal is to maximize revenue with respect to that implementation or integration project. They are almost always billing on a time and materials basis. They've got an incentive to make that project last longer. They don't have an issue with issues coming up, problems coming up in the integration of that software. They're going to be very quick. If there is some sort of functionality gap, they're going to be quick to recommend a substantive customization or modification to the system to address that functionality gap. They might not tell you, hey, this is not that big of a deal. Why don't we use it first, or whatever it is. They're going to be quick to do something that's going to generate additional revenue for them. And again, that's just a function of their self-interest and their bias. And I think you need to understand and have a caveat emptor, a buyer beware approach to all of these interactions, because people are not looking out for your best interest. They are looking out for their own interest. They are trying to maximize revenue very much at your expense, and you need to be aware of that. One of the other things that we will see with respect to integration consultants, integrators, implementation partners is that they very much have a technology first focus. And this kind of goes to this desire to make substantive modifications or customizations to the software. They're not thinking necessarily of the big picture of how all of this relates and how you're going to use it in connection with your business. So they're very much focused on what's right in front of them. It's if you're a carpenter, you've got a hammer and everything's a nail, and that's really kind of the perspective that they will bring to this. And I don't think there's nothing inherently wrong with that. I mean, in some ways that's what you want, but you need to know that this is not a holistic view. They're not looking at the bigger picture. That really is your job. What they will often do, in addition to having this technology first focus, is really use these kind of prefabricated cookie cutter implementation methodologies that have been honed over years, and that's just the way they do it. So you go to an implementation partner for SAP, an implementation partner for Oracle or NetSuite, and they have a very specific implementation methodology that they will follow every single time. And while there's some value to that, there's some economies of scale, they don't need to reinvent the wheel, but there's some limitations to that. The way that you conduct your business is not necessarily going to be the same way that the last 5 customers they had in your industry conduct their business. And you need to have someone with some level of independence, some independent thought that's going to be able to modify the way that they deliver those services and deviate from that implementation methodology and the recommendations they would typically make to the extent that it is appropriate for your particular project. One of the other things that we almost always see when we are dealing with litigation, cease and desist letters, allegations of functionality not being present, is really aggressive sales tactics. And I think where it presents itself most often is really in the sales cycle, where the sales reps are going to tell you what you want to hear. They will come in, they will get an understanding of what your business requirements are. They will tailor their presentations to those requirements so everything seems like it is a really good fit. They are going to maximize the positive associated with that software. Like I say, they're going to sell the sizzle. There may not be a lot of stake associated with it. They're going to show you functionality, technological innovations. They're going to show you, things that are at the vanguard of what that product can do. All of these shiny objects are going to be put in front of you, and it's going to be impressive. It's meant to be impressive, but very often there is a disconnect between what you have seen in a software demonstration and what you actually end up buying, and you need to get through that and figure out what is that product roadmap, what is in the software today, what do I need, what's my current state, what's my future state, and how is that going to match up with the functionality that's actually in that software. I think overselling certainly isn't fraud, and it's certainly not a misrepresentation, but it can cross the line pretty quickly. And I think the nature of software really lends itself to these misunderstandings, or even an aggressive salesperson taking advantage of kind of the gray area that really does encompass software. In almost every sales cycle, we will see a false sense of urgency that is created by the vendor, and that can take many forms. Where we will see it most often in the contracts that we will negotiate really is in these end of quarter deadlines or end of year deadlines. And those deadlines are always accompanied by some massive discount off of the list price of the software that you will not realize unless you sign on the dotted line by the end of the quarter or the end of the year. And to a large extent, that's really false. It's a false sense of urgency. It's not real. That is not to say that the particular mix, the particular level of discount is not going to go away. It very well might go away, but I think I've never seen a scenario where the deal was tanked. There wasn't an equivalent discount being provided. There wasn't something similar on offer. So I think you've got to do what's best for your company. You don't want to rush through these agreements. They can be incredibly complicated. They're hard to understand, and sometimes, frankly, you may not even have the full agreement in front of you. There's a pending case now where Oracle has been accused of deceptive trade practices, where it is basically embedding hyperlinks into order forms and not telling the customer that there's a whole other agreement on their website that governs that relationship. You need to take a step back. You need to look at these agreements. You need to make sure that you're getting the discounts that you need, that everything aligns with your business objectives, and it is going to take time. And the vendors know that, and they want to push you to get the deal done. And I think if you're getting an inordinate amount of sales pressure, you need to take a step back and really think about what's going on. What goes hand in hand with this false sense of urgency, but in a different context, a slightly different context, really is this push to the cloud. You've got a variety of different software vendors that are essentially putting a drop dead date by which they will no longer support this legacy on-prem software, and they need you to move to the cloud version of that software. And I think again, those deadlines can be somewhat arbitrary. Are they real deadlines? I guess they are, but it's a date that's kind of just picked out of a hat that really serves that vendor and its financial interests and doesn't necessarily serve you. And the reality is that if you are not in a position to transition into a cloud environment, this is a daunting project. It's not something that you simply can snap your fingers and do. I mean, you have to have the resources, the time, the money to be able to do this, and you have to be able to really withstand the operational disruption that is going to occur once you flip that switch and you go live with that software. And the reality today is that and I think it's getting better, but a lot of these cloud solutions are somewhat half-baked. They don't have the same level of functionality that you would find in the on-premise model that they want you to transition to. One of the things that they will not tell you, these vendors, is that if you don't transition to the cloud by that deadline, that you actually might have the ability to engage third-party service providers to continue to maintain and support that software. I mean, you've got to look at the contract, but that is often an option that is available to you, and certainly they're not going to tell you that. So there may be a sense of urgency, there may not be, but I think if you've got to look at it with the jaundiced eye, and you really have to do what is in your best interest. I hope you found this information useful. If you have any questions about anything that I've talked about in this video, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you. You can find me at taftlaw.com. Thank you.